Hey everybody, it's Tracy with Pearl Technology Consulting. I'm back with another cool Microsoft Excel tip. Have you ever received a spreadsheet, or maybe you've downloaded some data from a database and opened it up in an Excel spreadsheet and it looks something similar to what I have here? I've got one column that has first and last names all together in one column, and maybe I prefer to see those separated into two separate columns. I could, of course, go in and retype everything in two separate columns, and that would, of course, be time-consuming, especially if I had hundreds and hundreds of rows. The best thing to do, of course, would be to use the cool Microsoft Excel tool called Text to Columns. That's going to separate the data for me however I decide. So what you should do first, of course, is select your data. And you also want to make sure that you have an empty column next to the current data. So we do have an empty column there. If this were hundreds of rows, the easiest way to select all the data in that column would be to just simply select the first cell and press and hold your Control and your Shift keys down and hit that down arrow on your keyboard one time. That will select everything in that column that has content. So we've got our data selected. On the ribbon, choose the Data tab, and in the Data Tools group of tools right here, you're going to select Text to Columns. You'll see that a screen tip pops up to let you know what that tool does if you hover over it long enough. It lets us know that it splits a single column of data into multiple columns, and that's exactly what we need. So we'll go ahead and select that. The dialog box opens, and if this hovers or covers your data in some way, you can pick it up and move it along out of the way there. So what we have here is just a couple of things that we need to tell Excel, kind of verify how our content is currently. And by default, it shows us that this content is delimited. And this is just some data that I typed here. If you were to download something from another database, like say a .csv file, and open it up in Excel, it maybe would all come with fixed width. So it's just all about how your data is currently situated in the cell, in the column. Delimited means it's separated maybe with commas or tabs, and fixed, a lot of times that's just a fixed width from one side of the column to the next, and then you start your next group of text in that column. So you kind of have to look at your data and know a little bit about your data and play with it just to see. I've not had any problems by using delimited width here, so we'll keep this. Choose the Next button, and in the next screen you kind of can let Excel know how your data is going to sit when it's converted to two columns. A space normally gives us what we need. So if you uncheck that, you can see that you lose that column separating going on. So this is another area that you might have to test it out to see if it's doing what you want. You'll always see your little preview down here in the bottom. So I'm going to check space, and it shows us that it's separating at the space in that first column, giving us another column to give us the rest of the text. So this is what we want. We'll hit the Next button, and if we wanted to or needed to change the format of the content in those columns, we can select them one by one and change the format if we wanted it to be something other than general or date or whatnot. So we can do that individually. They don't have to be the same formatting. For our purposes today, general is going to work just fine. So we'll choose Finish. And voila! Just a couple of clicks of buttons, we can see that it has separated the first name and the last names into two separate columns for us. Let me show you one other thing. We have another sheet here where you have not just first and last names. Maybe you've got several sets or groups of text in the column separated by spaces. As you can take a look here, I've got a set of 3 numbers in this first cell, then a space, 3 more numbers, then a space. Same thing on the next row. But then on this row, I've got 2 numbers, space, 2 numbers, and so forth. And then I have even more than 3 sets of numbers, all separated by spaces. You can still use Text to Columns to separate your data into separate columns. They don't have to have the same number of characters, as long as there are spaces there and you can line things up. So we'll select our data. Again, Control Shift down arrow, Data tab, Text to Columns. This delimited will work just fine here. We'll hit Next. The space, it's showing us where it's separating at each space, and that is perfect. We'll hit Next again. We don't need to change or adjust the formatting of these numbers. General will work for us. And we'll hit Finish. And boom, you have all those separate columns, just a couple of clicks of buttons, just knowing that the text to columns tool is hanging out there to help us out and make us more efficient in Excel. Hopefully you enjoyed this cool tip. We'll see you next time. Thanks.